Horse-powered vacuum cleaners? It was a thing, and they didn't suck. Everyday things seem boring, but they can actually be fun. And some of them are pretty freaky. From lobsters being the cockroaches of the sea, to vegetables not existing, prepare to see everyday stuff in a whole new light. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are fun facts that'll make you look at everyday things differently. So if vegetables don't exist, what have we been shoveling down our necks all these years? The thing is, veggies are definitely real, but it's the description of them which is non-existent. Botanists, or plant people, don't have an official definition, so they don't exist in scientific terms. We just call them vegetables so we know what we're putting in our mouths. Broccoli's the worst. And celery. Celery sucks. Cucumbers suck too, I love pickles. You're more likely to drown in a big salty ocean than a smaller fresh-flowing stream, right? Wrong. A staggering 90% of drownings happen more inland. In fact, it's healthier to swallow salt water than fresh water in a life-threatening situation. Ah, figs. So delicious. So succulent. So stingy? I had no idea about this fact. Wasps lay their eggs in fig flowers. When you open a box of figs, chances are there's a secret ingredient you never knew about. Wasp DNA. That gives me a buzz in the entirely wrong way. The main thing, though, is not to panic, because the figs you get in stores are mostly wasp-free. Mostly. This fact really scares me. Did you know that 1 in 8 kids hear voices at some point? That's as common as asthma or dyslexia. In most cases, it's tied to growing up. Just kids using their big imaginations or dealing with everyday worries. It comes and goes without a trace. However, if the voices become persistent, distressing, or disruptive to daily life, seeking professional guidance is crucial. With understanding and support, kids who hear voices can navigate this experience and live happy, fulfilling lives. I am not a fan of sweat. I think if the entire point of it wasn't to cool your body down, I'd start a petition or something. But since we're stuck with it, have you ever stopped to wonder just how much you sweat every day? It's more than you think. The average person produces around 237 milliliters or 1 cup of sweat per day. However, that number can fluctuate based on your level of physical activity, acclimatization, and other things like your age or gender. Some of this sweat evaporates directly from your skin, but the disgusting truth is that most of it is absorbed by your clothes or bedding. A last not-so-fun fact, one study suggests that your poor mattress actually absorbs about 26 gallons of sweat every year. Gross. High above the bustling streets of Mumbai, the Zoroastrians of India uphold a 3,000-year-old tradition. Here, in the Towers of Silence, nature reclaims its own in a stark and unforgettable ritual. The unclothed bodies of their dead are laid bare to be consumed by vultures, leaving nothing behind but bleached bones. For the Zoroastrians, this sky burial is not a morbid practice. They consider earth and fire sacred. As such, sky burials are their way to avoid polluting those elements. There are a lot of ancient practices we'll probably never understand. Chief among them, the Aztecs and their practice of child sacrifice. Driven by the grip of drought and a belief system that intertwined human sacrifice with the cycles of nature, the Aztecs turned to this heart-wrenching practice as a desperate plea for rain. They believed that the tears of these young victims, shed in terror and pain, would appease Tlaloc, moving him to release the life-giving waters from the sky. While child sacrifice to Tlaloc was particularly prevalent during periods of drought, it also occurred during specific calendar months and at key ceremonial sites like the Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan. Archaeologists recently discovered something quite unimaginable in a cave in Somerset, UK. Human skulls meticulously crafted into bowls and cups. These bowls and cups displayed a surprising amount of detail. It was clear that the soft tissue, base, and facial bones were meticulously removed, while the skull edges were smoothed. The find left the world with more questions than answers. Were these trophies of war, tools made for rituals, or just a response to desperate circumstances? Whatever the reason, these skull cups show a noticeable disregard for the dead. Here's a frightening fact. We have 2 innate fears. Now, innate means something we're born with, by the way. We're born with a natural fear of loud noises and falling over. 2 innate fears isn't so bad. Unfortunately, when we go through life, we pick up a whole bunch of new fears. Just because they're not innate doesn't make them less scary. A squirrel may look harmless, but this little critter caused mayhem in Montana in 2023. Approximately 15,000 people sweltered in the heat thanks to squirrels interfering with the power supply. They snuck into the substation and caused 3 serious power outages. New Jersey also had a power issue when a bird dropped a fish onto a transformer just weeks earlier. Squirrels are known for being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. This especially applies when they've been electrocuted. Wow, that was dark. Oh, I do not wish harm upon squirrels, or any living being for that matter. Wow! Wasn't expecting that. Time for some wordplay with an Aussie flavor. A synonym is basically a word that's super close in meaning to another word, so a synonym of list is record. Meanwhile, a kangaroo word is a word that contains a synonym, like a 2-for-1 type deal. Examples include encourage, which contains the word urge, and rambunctious, which contains raucous. Have you guessed why they're called kangaroo words? That's because one carries the other, which you can compare to a kangaroo with a baby joey in its pouch. Maybe you swallowed a Lego brick as a kid. Maybe you did it as an adult, though that sounds pretty strange. Or does it? In a 2018 study, scientists decided to see how long it would take for a plastic brick to travel through the human digestive system. The average journey turned out to be 1.71 days. So, now you know. War is a game, they say. Do they? I thought they said it's not good for anything. That's certainly true in the case of the US Navy. They used Xbox controllers as part of a submarine operation back in 2017. A photonic mast was controlled using the iconic entertainment system's hardware, meaning the crew could see where they were going and such. It also came in handy when the sub was chased by a deathclaw. We're trying too hard here. Oh no. As with most living things, humans are actually composed of billions of little cells that are constantly buzzing to keep our bodies alive and functional. However, compared to a whole human's lifespan, cell lifespans are relatively short. Our skin is no different, being composed of millions of little cells that die long before we do. And when we inevitably shed those little cell corpses, they accumulate everywhere, on surfaces, loved ones, and even in the air. It's a little disconcerting to constantly walk around in clouds of little microbial corpses. We will produce a staggering 49 to 105 pounds of dead skin cells throughout our lifetime, but they aren't dying in vain. Our skin is our barrier of protection against the outer world, protecting us from UV rays and germs. By shedding our outer layers, we also rid ourselves of dirt, toxins, and even potentially deadly pathogens lurking on its surface. Now, let's take a moment to honor the millions of valiant little cells that die every hour to keep our skin safe. Or, I don't know, billions, and I can only imagine. I have psoriasis. I can only imagine how much I shed a day. Yep. That number for me is probably way higher. Once again, psoriasis, not dandruff. I will inevitably be asked that or told, you have dandruff, fix it. It's psoriasis. So 20% of your colleagues' mugs are potential germ bombs harboring hidden deposits of fecal matter, according to a study by the University of Arizona's Professor Gerba. This translates to 1 in 5 seemingly innocent mugs hosting E. coli, a notorious culprit of gastrointestinal distress. Shared sponges and unhygienic cleaning practices are often to blame, turning those communal sink areas into breeding grounds for bacteria. So next time, it might be better to enjoy your coffee in your very own personal mug, freshly washed at home to avoid an unwelcome microbial encounter. I was debating whether or not I wanted to pull out this mug, which is one of my favorites, or this one. But probably wasn't the best idea to be like, here's the List 25 mug as I talk about fecal matter. And horror movies. The Vent Haven Museum is home to over 900 ventriloquist dolls. And you can forget about cuddly childhood companions. These dolls are seasoned performers and saw their fair share of vaudeville routines and whispered jokes. However, beyond the historical intrigue lies a scientific fact that'll give you goosebumps. A study has shown that 90% of these dolls harbor a significant amount of bacteria, thanks to decades of close contact with human performers. And here's the kicker, or should I say gut-wrencher. 20% of these silent faces have been found to host E. coli. Yes, the same one that can be found on your colleague's coffee mug. So while the artistry and historical value of the dolls are undeniable, a visit might turn into a museum experience that goes beyond mere entertainment. Note to self, I need to Google how long E. coli lasts on surfaces. Whether you're a believer or not, there are some genuine chills within Rome's Sacro Cuore del Suffragio church. Here, the Museo delle Anime del Purgatorio claims to house tangible proof of the afterlife. Documents, photographs, and even fabrics allegedly bearing the imprints of souls trapped in purgatory. If that's not disturbing enough, you should also know that studies have shown that over 80% of the museum's exhibits display unusual heat signatures, often concentrated around handprints and signatures on the supposed purgatory relics. And get this, 40% of those same heat signatures defy scientific explanation, defying known thermal transfer patterns. According to the museum, these objects were delivered by the deceased themselves, desperate for the living's prayers to escape their fiery limbo. Cold cuts are supposed to be cold. That's why they call them cold cuts. But if you happen to be a pregnant woman, or you're getting on in your years, official advice says you should heat them up. 165 degrees plus is what you need to look for when warming that savory treat. There's a link made between processed meat and the listeria bug, which kills over 250 people every year in the US. If you have a weakened immune system, it's super important to do this. The drive-thru is the fastest and most efficient way to grab a tasty burger. Unless you're me, I have zero luck at fast food restaurants, or restaurants in general. Literally just today, they forgot my sandwich. No wonder, it started off as a military thing. In 1975, a gap in the market was spotted. Soldiers in uniform who wanted McDonald's couldn't just walk in wearing their uniform. Army rules and regs prevented them. Starting in Arizona, the drive-thru made the perfect solution. You could bag a Happy Meal and be back at base in time to salute. This sounds like something from Monty Python, but it was all too real. Back in 1901, the first vacuum cleaner was unveiled in England by engineer Hubert Cecil Booth, and it was a little bigger than we're used to now. In fact, it needed petrol to operate, and a horse to pull it along. Also, you vacuumed from the outside. The cleaner stayed in the street, and the tubes had to be very long to reach the inside of the property, kind of like Stanley's steamer, but a vacuum. Imagine hearing the sound of horses' hooves and knowing you were about to get your carpet cleaned. History is a weird beast at times. Did you see the first Croods movie? I loved it. Do you remember that scene where we see all the five-fingered handprints of their ancestors in the cave? Well, yeah, that image wasn't all that accurate. In several caves across Europe, ancient artists left handprints that are, well, missing fingers. I know what you're thinking. Sure, it was a rough time. Injuries probably led to amputations. But here's the twist. A study now suggests that the artists amputated their own fingers on purpose. And it's not even that strange. The deliberate amputation of fingers was practiced in 121 ancient cultures throughout the world, usually for rituals, sacrifices, and mourning. So we might have to rethink that mental image. Especially if you were in the Assassin Brotherhood. This one was gone. Did you know that children's fingerprints disappear much faster than adults? A recent study tested 97 people, comparing how long their fingerprints lasted on glass slides. Prints were lifted on days 1, 3, 5, and 7. While almost all adult prints stayed intact through day 7, kids' prints faded rapidly. By day 3, 20% of the children's prints were unclear. By day 5, over half had disappeared. By day 7, 76% were gone. Scientists believe the culprit is fatty acids. Kids' fingertips produce more of these oils, causing their prints to break down faster. This difference in chemical composition also makes children's fingerprints less likely to be detected using standard forensic methods. Please don't use your children to do crimes with this information. It's a PSA. When it comes to child sacrifice rituals, the Mayans and Aztecs usually steal the spotlight. But the Greeks were just as grim. Archaeologists have uncovered an enormous altar at Mount Lycaon, a site dedicated to Zeus, packed with burned goat and sheep remains, along with vessels, figurines, and coins. All standard stuff. Until they unearthed the skeleton of an adolescent male dating back 3,000 years. Ancient records have long suggested that human sacrifices were part of the rituals at Mount Lycaon. This discovery offers compelling evidence to support those claims. Did you know that over 150 million women worldwide use oral contraceptives? These pills aren't just used for birth control, they're also prescribed to regulate periods, clear up acne, and treat endometriosis. However, new research suggests they might be changing women's brains. A study presented at the Radiology Society of North America found that women on oral contraceptives had a smaller hypothalamus, the part of the brain that controls mood and behavior. Early findings even linked this change to higher rates of depression and mood disorders. Confirming these findings could pave the way for a reevaluation of birth control methods and their effects on the brain. While some might find the custom of a monthly stipend within a marriage strange, the Okozukai system is a cornerstone of household finances in Japan. Okozukai literally translates to small spending money, and is an allowance that husbands receive from their wives to cover their personal expenses when it comes to clothes, hobbies, or even nights out. But the tradition goes beyond pocket money. While it might seem unusual, Okozukai fosters a collaborative approach to finances, with the wife managing household expenses and savings, and the husband having some financial freedom for his own needs. Did you know that your sweat isn't actually smelly? Those unpleasant odors are actually the result of bacteria breaking down your sweat. That's unless you're part of the 2% of people who have the ABCC11 gene. The gene has a mutation that reduces the production of a protein bacteria needed to break down sweat. The result? Odorless armpits, even after a workout. We all know adrenaline can make you do strange things, but handling a car like it weighs nothing? That's next level. In 2012, Lauren Kornacki, a petite and slender 22-year-old, stumbled upon a nightmare in her family's driveway in Virginia. Her father was pinned under a BMW 525i, unconscious, with his arm trapped beneath his chest. The car jack had failed, and it seemed impossible for someone like Lauren to move this 1.5-ton vehicle. Yet, in an adrenaline-fueled surge, she not only lifted the car, but shoved it aside. After freeing him, she performed CPR, saving his life. I know being able to hear a whispered conversation from across the room sounds like a superpower, but for Stephen Mabbitt, it was more of a nightmare. His hearing became so sensitive that he could hear his eyeballs move. In fact, he could hear every other sound his body made too. Stephen suffered from hyperacusis, a rare condition linked to superior canal dehiscence syndrome. This occurs when a bone above the ear's semicircular canal is missing, leading to symptoms like dizziness, vertigo, and painfully acute hearing. The condition became unbearable, and Stephen eventually had surgery to repair his ear. He now hears like us regular people. If that's what you've been waiting to hear since the first day your mom told you to make your bed, well, I'm happy to be of service. A study from Kingston University has revealed that dust mites thrive in warm, moist environments. So, if you just jump up in the morning and make your bed, well, you're trapping them in the ultimate cozy spot. However, should you leave your bed unmade, it exposes them to sunlight and fresh air, which can dehydrate and kill them. But that doesn't mean that you should leave your bed messy forever. While a messy bed will reduce dust mites in the short term, you should still wash your sheets regularly and air out your mattress occasionally to keep things healthy. Researchers recently discovered that crushed eggshells packed with calcium can be used to create a special material called hydrogel. This hydrogel acts like a scaffold, providing a perfect environment for bone cells to grow and develop. And the best part? Since the eggshells are made of calcium, the cells can harden faster and transform into new bone tissue. And since it offers a potentially more natural and readily available alternative for promoting bone growth, the risks that come with bone graft surgery can soon be a thing of the past. We all know, or can imagine, what happens when someone gets hit by a train. Walking away from it doesn't form part of the equation. But that's exactly what Eugene Barb did. In October 2018, a severely inebriated Barb found himself on the tracks as a train approached. He tried to move, but he didn't make it in time. A witness on the train heard the impact and assumed the worst. Yet moments later, Barb stood up and stumbled off as if nothing had happened. Authorities found him nearby hours later. No charges were filed. Getting hit by a train seemed punishment enough. We all have a type, whether it's someone tall, short, or blonde. We usually think we're in control of who we're attracted to. However, research has revealed that a man's stress levels can significantly influence his idea of attractiveness. A study by Newcastle University found that stressed men were noticeably more drawn to heavier women than their relaxed counterparts. Another study found that hungry men, another form of stress, found larger breasts more attractive. Scientists think this may be an evolutionary leftover from times when food was scarce, and physical traits tied to survival were seen as more appealing. I know you've been waiting for this one. King Charles II of England used to indulge in a very macabre beverage, the King's Drops, a personally concocted tincture containing a powdered human skull. Yeah, skull. Beyond the ghoulish main ingredient, Charles's court also prized an even more unsettling additive, usnea, a type of moss that grew over buried skulls. This death moss, as it was ominously nicknamed, was pulverized and added to the tincture and believed to be a cure for nosebleeds and even epilepsy. Gold and jewels might be lovely trinkets in the world of tyrants, but Emperor Nero found his fortune flowing from a different source: human urine. Yeah. In a tax scheme called Vectigal Urinae, Nero and his successor Vespasian imposed a levy on the collection and distribution of, well, pee. But this wasn't just any waste disposal fee. Wealthy Romans, particularly in the textile industry, used urine as a valuable natural resource. Its ammonia content made it an essential ingredient for cleaning and whitening wool, an important fabric in the empire. Almost 90% of public toilets in Rome eventually emptied into a vast network, generating colossal urine budgets. When we think of Mount Everest, conquering peak selfies and triumphant summit flags usually come to mind. But it harbors a stark reality. Over 200 climbers will remain on the mountain forever. Above 8,000 meters, or 26,246 feet, that's about 5 times the height of the Empire State Building, Everest's thin air plunges climbers into the dreaded death zone, where oxygen levels plummet to less than a third of what we usually breathe. Climbers will experience blurry vision, severe fatigue, and hallucinations, all just steps from the summit. As such, this is where many succumb to exhaustion, altitude sickness, or fatal accidents. Some, like the iconic Sleeping Beauty, become tragic landmarks, while others vanish, swallowed by crevices or buried under shifting glaciers. Today, these frozen remains unfortunately pose a growing environmental and health concern. As climate change melts glaciers, more and more concerns are being raised about contamination and the exposure of decaying bodies and old climbing gear. The golden poison frog from Central and South America isn't your average amphibian. Nope. This tiny amphibian, barely bigger than a grape, carries enough venom in its glistening skin to kill 20,000 mice, or send 10 adults on a one-way trip to the great beyond. But beyond the scare factor, the golden poison frog's toxicity actually serves an important purpose. The potent venom, a cocktail of deadly neurotoxins, is an evolutionarily honed defense against hungry predators. And it works. Bright colors scream danger, and one taste is enough to convince even the boldest hunter to look for safer snacks. In the late 18th century, the explorer Jonas Hanway did something daring. He opened an umbrella. What was so daring about that? This was a terrible idea. Well, back then, umbrellas were something associated with women. You could have one if you were a man, but it was frowned upon, because you weren't a real man unless you got soaked by a downpour, it seems. Here's something to make you think. A dodgy website is a surefire way to catch a virus, but a holier-than-thou religious site can be even worse. Research by the company Symantec revealed you're around 4 times more likely to pick up something nasty by surfing with your favorite deity. Save me, oh Lord! Or pray for some decent antivirus software. A study by the University of Edinburgh measured tongues, and the results are in. On average, men hold the slight lead in the tongue length department with about 3.3 inches, compared to a woman's 3.1 inches. That's a difference of about 0.2 inches, or half a centimeter. But remember folks, your tongue size doesn't define you. There's much more to life than tongue sizes. Now, I wonder, What's the average length of a puppy tongue? Say hi, buddy. This is Picasso. We've all swatted our fair share of irritating mosquitoes, but what if the secret weapon against those bloodthirsty bugs was hiding in your vanity case? Believe it or not, a 2015 study found that Victoria's Secret's bombshell fragrance actually repelled mosquitoes for up to 2 hours. And according to comment sections everywhere, another Victoria's Secret scent, Amber Romance, might just be as effective as bug spray. Sure, the price tag might sting a little more than a mosquito bite, but hey, at least you'll smell good while you're fending off the little fiends. Just don't rely solely on perfume in the jungle, okay? Where's my pocket? Found it. Nailed it. Have you ever wondered why your cat's ears are so fuzzy? It's not just for cuteness, even though they are positively adorable. Anyway, those feathery bits are actually called ear furnishings, and they work double duty. They help your feline friend hear the crinkle of a treat bag from across the room and act as a filter, keeping out dust, dirt, and even pesky insects. If you look at yourself in the mirror and you think that your nose or ears appear bigger than they should be, well, then the reason's probably gravity. We're used to thinking of the effects of gravity on other parts of our body, but this one is literally staring you in the face. Unlike most mammals, mama bats deliver their young upside down while clinging to a branch or cave ceiling. They typically have one pup at a time, although some bat species might be busier with up to 4. But don't worry about the babies taking a tumble. They're born with excellent reflexes and instinctively cling to their mom's fur as she delivers. Securely clinging to mom, the tiny acrobat is then tucked into a special pouch near her belly for warmth and protection. Acrobat. Full of jokes for days. Lobsters didn't always have a luxurious reputation. For example, up until the middle of the 18th century, Europeans weren't keen to eat them. Why? Because they were seen as scavengers, unclean creatures who feed off the bottom of the ocean. Now, stick them on a plate with a lemon wedge and you can make a fortune. Feeling happy, yet worried at the same time? Well, you're not alone. There's a name for what you might be experiencing, and that's cherophobia. It partly comes from the ancient Greek word rejoice, or chairo, a phobia of enjoyment. Sure, you're content. Don't get too comfy though, it could be stolen from you at any moment. Cherophobia has been linked to feelings such as jealousy and guilt, not to mention fate working against you. If this is what you're going through, then it's worth checking yourself out. Homework wasn't always the after-school staple it is today. In fact, some historical figures like Thomas Edison argued that too much could be harmful to a child's health. Fast forward to today, research suggests there might actually be some truth to that. Studies show that excessive homework can lead to stress, anxiety, and even sleep deprivation, all of which can take a toll on a kid's mental and physical well-being. There's no getting away from saliva. It is always in your mouth. Sometimes it appears while you're sleeping. Why am I telling you these gross things? Not because I have an icky but fascinating fact. The amount of spit you produce between birth and death is equal to that of 53 bathtubs. Oh, now I really need to take a bath. Actually, you know what? I think I'll just jump in the shower instead. That's better. How long does it take for a guy to lose interest whilst shopping with his partner? Oh, they worked it out. 26 minutes. Extensive browsing and feeling hungry are two major factors behind male boredom here, as highlighted in a 2013 study. Recent research involving brain imaging and dream reports have revealed that our brains can't actually create new faces while we dream, which begs the question, who are all those people in our dreams then? Well, according to those in the know, every person you see in your dreams, from your best friend to the random stranger at the park, likely has a real-life counterpart. It could be someone familiar, a face you saw briefly in public, or even someone you barely registered online. Your brain simply reassembles little snippets of memory to create the people in your dreams. It's one of those words you either find charming or irritating. Y'all. Where does it come from? Is it an American word? It actually dates back to 1631. At least that's the earliest known reference. The Fair Ethiopian by British poet William Lyle Bowes is the source. A section reads, "And this y'all know is true." The next reference is in the Oxford English Dictionary over 200 years later. Elon Musk is the name behind the social media brand these days, but the first ambassador was a bird named Larry. Way before X, you had this sweet little tweeter who paid tribute to Larry Bird of the Boston Celtics. The original Larry was a whole lot skinnier. I guess he ate like a bird. Over time, he was replaced by increasingly fatter-looking logos before Musk finally flipped the bird in 2023. We still all refer to it as Twitter, by the way. In 2019, a zebra foal with unique polka dot markings was spotted in Kenya's Masai Mara National Reserve. The very rare sighting was the first of its kind. The foal, discovered by Anthony Tira, one of the park's guides, has a black coat with scattered white spots. Scientists believe it's a case of pseudomelanism, a genetic condition affecting pigment. While it definitely stands out, the foal appeared to be healthy at the time of the sighting. You can find these not in a church, but in a helicopter. Connecting the rotor blades and the rest of the craft, it's a vital part of the structure. Why do they call it that? Well, should anything happen to it mid-flight, you may find yourself saying, Jesus. Babies blink a fraction compared to adults, like 1 or 2 blinks a minute versus 10 to 15. Scientists believe this is due to their developing eyesight. The world is a captivating spectacle for babies, and blinking might disrupt this crucial information gathering. As an added benefit, limited blinking also helps their brains process all the visual data while building strong eyesight. We've all heard of near extinction, but what about evolving back into existence twice? The Aldabra rail evolved to be a flightless bird over hundreds of thousands of years. They used to live in peace and harmony on Aldabra Atoll until it sank into the ocean 136,000 years ago, in the process, wiping them out. That should have been it for the Aldabras, but evolution is a funny thing. When the atoll eventually rose again, a close relative of the Aldabra rail recolonized the island, and incredibly later evolved flightlessness all over again. If that's not perseverance, I don't know what is. Smell is very important when it comes to how things taste. So, if you block your nostrils with a plug, then some pretty different tasting things would seem exactly the same, right? Take a potato and an onion. A mild taste and a super strong one. According to at least one expert, you'd munch through both without a problem. I guess the tastes would match, but the onion wouldn't make your eyes water? That's kind of actually a bit of a giveaway for a blind taste test, I'm thinking. The world's oldest surviving paper money, created during the reign of the Hongwu Emperor in China, dates all the way back to 1375. These early banknotes, called Da Ming Chongxing Bao Chao, which translates to Great Ming Circulating Treasure Note, I know, it's a mouthful, were actually quite common. However, hyperinflation struck, making them worthless. People then stored them away in jars and boxes, accidentally creating perfect time capsules, which now offer us a glimpse into a bygone era. This might sound like a weird question, but do you ever think about everything that happens to our bodies when we die? A recent Australian study observed a cadaver for over a year, and what they discovered is unlike anything we imagined. The study found that the body actually moved around slowly over time because of the drying out process of tissues like ligaments and muscles. It might not be the kind of fact that you discuss at the next parent-teacher conference, but it's fascinating nonetheless. Which is better, going to the office or to the battlefield? Maybe you work at a really unpleasant workplace, so who cares? One thing you should care about, however, is this stat. The chances of you dying en route to work are 3 times greater than if you were heading out for war. Your options for death are more limited in combat, perhaps. I guess I'd rather buy it under the wheels of a bus than from a sniper bullet or landmine, though. I'd rather none of the above. I choose option C. The Santa Margarita de Sacot Chapel can be found deep inside a dormant volcano in Catalonia, Spain. Built around the 12th century, it's said to have been a pilgrimage site dedicated to St. Margaret, who famously battled a dragon. Today, the chapel isn't used for regular services because of its remote location, but it still attracts adventurous tourists who love to take pictures of the breathtaking views. These giant constrictors are viviparous, meaning they give birth to live young. A single female can deliver up to 3 dozen babies, each around 2 feet long at birth. The young anacondas are independent from the start, ready to swim and hunt for their own survival. Earlier I talked about how umbrellas were seen as a women's thing. Well, high heels used to be preferred by men. Long before RuPaul's Drag Race, 10th century soldiers from Persia found that high heels kept you on your horse for longer. Your feet fit inside the stirrups better, meaning you can focus on fun things like cutting down your enemy with arrows. Fun! The title of World's Oldest Recipe belongs to nettle pudding, a dish dating back to an astonishing 6,000 years. Made with stinging nettles, carefully processed to remove the sting, water and flour, the prehistoric pudding might not be something we would consider tasty today, but it still tells us a lot about our ancestors' culinary ingenuity. I wonder if they added honey to that. In 1970, Canada's Northwest Territories celebrated its centennial with a unique symbol, a polar bear-shaped license plate. It wasn't just a cool design choice. The polar bear is the territory's most common land predator, making it a fitting emblem. The designers cleverly ensured that the license plate adhered to standard size regulations while maintaining the bear shape. They even inspired a neighboring territory, Nunavut, to do the same for a short while. Have you ever zoned out while someone is talking? Hopefully I haven't done it during this video, but if you have, then you know what? I don't mind. Some scientists believe that this is an important function of your brain. You may not be doing anything except staring into space, yet that doesn't mean your mind has switched off. It isn't exactly a good thing because you can miss details and get things completely wrong, but it's totally normal and is as much a part of your thinking process as memorizing facts.
We all like to think we're pretty ethical, but just thinking about money can send your moral compass spinning. In a Harvard-Utah study, participants played word games that featured either neutral or money-related words like spend and buy. Afterwards, they were asked to make business decisions involving a moral choice. The results? Those exposed to the money-themed words tossed their ethics out the window, happily lying and deceiving even when there was no benefit to doing so. Apparently, the mere thought of money is enough to lead to shady behavior.
Did you know your font choice can influence how convincing your essay appears to your readers? Studies have shown that people are more likely to agree with arguments presented in Baskerville compared to, say, Helvetica or Comic Sans. Apparently, its elegant and readable typeface subconsciously projects authority and trustworthiness. Cats have their own way of communicating, with meows, purrs, and unique pitch changes. And for some bizarre reason, one scientist has taken it upon himself to bridge the gap with music designed specifically for felines. University of Maryland composer David Taye created several compositions that consider how cats hear, incorporating elements like purring and nursing sounds. Incredibly, the cats exhibited a greater interest in his meow mix than regular music, suggesting it might just be the answer every cat owner struggling to chat with their furry friend has been looking for. The 1963 hit Louie Louie by the Kingsmen wasn't just catchy, it was FBI worthy. Some listeners were confused by the muffled lyrics, especially when played at faster speeds, and decided that it had to contain hidden messages. The paranoid confusion sparked a 2-year investigation by the feds, who analyzed recordings and even interviewed band members. In the end, the FBI's findings were as clear as the song itself. Louie Louie contained no secret messages, just some rockin' and romanticized storytelling. The next breakthrough in burn treatment might come from an unexpected source: fish skin. Tilapia skin, to be precise, is showing a lot of promise as a natural and powerful way to heal burns. Studies suggest it could also promote faster healing and blood vessel growth, all crucial for tissue repair. While fish skin bandages aren't widely used in mainstream medicine yet, the ongoing trials are giving us a glimpse into a cost-effective and better future for burn care. This song isn't just catchy, it's scientifically proven to calm your mind and help you relax. The band, Marconi Union, collaborated with sound therapists to create a soundscape specifically designed to trigger deep relaxation. They even match the starting tempo to your resting heart rate, around 60 beats per minute, and science backs it up. In 2017, an official study found that waitlist reduced listeners' stress and anxiety by an incredible 65%. Movie snacks come in all shapes and sizes, and in Colombia, it can also be unexpected: roasted ants. The delicacy has a long and colorful history and has been enjoyed by indigenous people in the Santander region for millennia. Known as hormiga culona, meaning big bottom ant, they are regarded as a tasty and nutritious source of protein. Today, these time-honored treats are a surprising cinema snack enjoyed in single-serving cups. Is it a trend that might catch on everywhere? Who knows? But I might be partial to something dipped in chocolate or ice cream.
Believe it or not, fast food is ruining your ability to enjoy beauty. In a study done in Toronto, participants were rounded up and shown either fast food or neutral images before breathtaking nature scenes. The result? Those who saw the burgers and fries found the beauty far less enjoyable. The experiment didn't stop there. When researchers swapped the nature shots for an opera aria, The same thing happened. People exposed to fast food found the music less appealing and felt it dragged on. The study suggests that fast food primes our brains for impatience, leaving little room to savor slow, meaningful experiences. We're told that sex brings connection and joy, but for some, it's followed by sadness, anxiety, or even existential angst. The phenomenon, known as postcoital dysphoria, PCD, affects both men and women. In fact, a 2018 study found over 40% of men have experienced it at least once, and 33 to 46% of women report similar feelings. It flips the script on what we expect from intimacy. Instead of satisfaction, PCD leaves some questioning themselves or feeling an emotional void, proving that even life's most pleasurable moments can come with unexpected complexities. Raise your hand if you were bullied in school. With 1/3 of the world's youth experiencing bullying, it's sadly very common. The worst part is that it can derail future job prospects, harm mental health, and leave lasting scars. But the most shocking part is that children reward bullying with social status, making bullies more popular. This creates a huge challenge for anti-bullying campaigns. When bullying earns admiration and standing up to it risks isolation, most kids side with the bullies. Only the most universally liked, or disliked, students avoid the pressures to join in. For everyone else, being a jerk becomes the quickest path to the top.
You might want to hold on to your eyelashes. Although maybe not. This is very weird and uncomfortable. Because, I can't see. You probably have Demodex mites for roommates. Almost 95% of adults carry these minuscule critters on their faces. But don't reach for the bug spray just yet. These mites are usually content to coexist and dine on dead skin cells and oils around your follicles. But sometimes the party gets out of control. When Demodex populations explode, things can get ugly. Should you experience red, bumpy, and itchy or crusty lashes and eyelids that feel like battlegrounds, a trip to the eye doctor might be in order. Did you know the water you swim in could hide a mind-altering nightmare? The micro-monster is known as Naegleria fowleri, or simply, the brain-eating amoeba. They thrive in warm, fresh water, like your local lake, river, or even that seemingly idyllic hot spring. They lurk in the sediment, waiting. A splash, a dive, a forgotten nosebleed. All it takes is a tiny entrance through your nose for them to climb your nerves and burrow into your brain. The result? Primary amoebic meningoencephalitis, a rare but almost always fatal brain infection. Symptoms like headaches, fever, and stiff neck quickly escalate to hallucinations, seizures, and ultimately, coma. Calyptra is a genus of moths that have ditched pollen for a far more chilling cuisine: blood. They come packed with barbed tongues and will pierce the skin of everything from deer to, even humans to gorge themselves on the crimson juice. The winged fiends can be found in South and Central America, Africa, Madagascar, and Southeast Asia. And here's the uncomfortable fact. 8 Calyptra species have already been caught red-handed, or should I say red-mouthed, taking part in their favorite macabre meal.
Certain things are guaranteed to lower your intelligence. Booze, bong hits, or repeatedly slamming your head into a wall, for instance, won't win you any IQ points. But did you know long commutes can make you dumber? A University of Leicester study tracked over 500,000 people for 5 years, testing memory and intelligence along the way. Of the group, 93,000 drove more than 2 hours daily. Not only did they start with lower cognitive scores, but their abilities steadily declined over time. Researchers attribute this to the mental inactivity of long drives, a phenomenon also observed in those who watch over 3 hours of TV daily. No matter how non-judgmental we claim to be, meeting someone new always triggers quick mental impressions. Do they look rich? What's up with their style? Are those scars suspicious? Before you even realize it, your brain has already made a subconscious judgment, and it's often more accurate than you think. Research shows that it takes your brain just 0.1 seconds to form these impressions. Whether it's about someone's sexuality, competence, or political views, the brain's snap judgments are usually spot on. It's only when you consciously overthink that these impressions turn into stereotypes, which are usually wrong. For most of us, calendars are just grids on a wall. But for people with calendar synesthesia, time is vivid and real, taking on forms like V-shapes, giant rings, or sprawling horseshoes. Some even see time flowing around their bodies, with months anchored at specific points in space. Like the one synesthete who described her past curving around her body, while another said December passed through her right side and July hovered 3 feet ahead. The phenomenon, rooted in the brain, links sensory and neurological pathways, much like tasting words or hearing colors. With over 3 million potential synesthetes in the US, it might be more common than we think. Some disorders are so bizarre, they defy logic, like autophagia, a condition where people compulsively bite or eat parts of their own body. Often beginning with nail biting, it can escalate to severe self-mutilation. One documented case involved a man who started biting his nails and eventually caused serious injuries to his fingers. While autophagia isn't specifically listed in the DSM, or Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, it's often associated with impulse control disorder or neurological conditions. From Hollywood blockbusters to fashion and music, American trends dominate across the globe. But sometimes they take off in places you'd never expect and morph into something truly unconventional. In the mid-20th century, Western movies became such a global hit that Congolese teens started calling themselves Bills after Buffalo Bill. They dressed the part too. Cowboy hats, boots, and even plaid shirts, channeling their inner gunslingers. They even created their own language, Hindubil, inspired by the films. It's crazy when you think about it. American cowboy flicks inspired a whole subculture on the other side of the world. Cowboys in the Congo? That's cultural influence you can't make up.
While the idea of your beloved pet chowing down on you after you kick the bucket is undeniably unsettling, the reality is nuanced, and thankfully quite rare. Researchers like Carolyn Rando, a forensic anthropologist, have delved into the chilling phenomenon of post-mortem predation by pets. Their findings? Dogs were responsible for a whopping 82%, while cats lagged behind at 11%. The remaining 7%? Well, let's just say it wasn't puppies and kittens. We've all had a bout of insomnia, but can you imagine never sleeping again? Fatal familial insomnia is a rare genetic disease that obliterates sleep from your existence, leading to a horrifyingly rapid decline and inevitable death. Our numbers paint a grim picture. On average, FFI steals your life in just 18 months. Some are even less fortunate, trapped in this waking nightmare for as little as 7. But it's not just about sleep. As your brain unravels, so does your mind. Dementia claws its way in, stripping away memories and leaving behind chilling emptiness. Coma becomes the final, horrifying chapter in this tragic story. There's no cure, and no magic switch to flip your brain back to sleep. In 2019, one man's chest pains had doctors preparing for the worst, potential lung cancer. But the scalpel revealed a far stranger culprit, a 5-centimeter fir tree branch in his respiratory system. Doctors believe that Artyom Sidorkin, perhaps snacking in the forest, accidentally swallowed a fir bud. Mistaking Artyom's lung for fertile soil, this tiny adventurer sprouted into a miniature coniferous condo. While such cases are rare, they're not unheard of. Peanuts, carrots, and even tomato plants have all sprouted in unexpected human nooks and crannies. Thankfully, Artyom's tree was evicted without major complications, and he made a full recovery. Can you imagine being completely faceblind, never recognizing your parents, siblings, or even best friends? Or even worse, having a child and never being able to recognize them, or the people you left them with at daycare. This brain-based phenomenon, known as prosopagnosia, affects a surprisingly high 2.5% of the population. It isn't a temporary lapse of memory, it's a neurological disconnect. 2 main types exist: acquired, often triggered by brain damage from stroke or injury, and developmental, present from birth due to genetic or brain malformations. Currently, no cure exists. However, hope lies in compensatory strategies. By focusing on non-facial cues like voice, gait, and hairstyle, individuals with prosopagnosia can learn to navigate social interactions and identify familiar individuals.
Speaking of unconventional, we all love the odd royal ceremony, but they looked a bit different in the old days. For the Celts, a king's nipples were sacred. Loyalty meant ritually sucking them during royal ceremonies. Yeah, really. Despite their reverence, these royal symbols of power were prime targets. Researchers studying Irish bog bodies found bodies with mutilated nipples, likely marking dethroned kings. Rivals would cut off a claimant's nipples to disqualify them, and for a defeated king, the nipples went before his life. As if that weren't enough, kings were believed to be consorts of a fertility goddess. If misfortune struck the land, the blame fell on the king, and his nipples, naturally, were the first sacrifice. Who would have thought that belly flops could lead to groundbreaking research? A 2023 study investigated the mechanics of this painful splash using high-speed cameras and human analog dummies. Researchers found that a flat entry angle, or 0 degrees, created maximum force, resulting in the loud, stinging slap we all dread. Incredibly, the study was extremely useful. Lifeguards now use the findings to refine water entry techniques, reducing injuries during rescues. It's also influenced the design of rescue gear, particularly the design of flotation devices and protective gear. Here on Earth, a candle flame forms that familiar teardrop shape. That's because hot air rises, cooler air fills in below, and the flame stretches upward. Gravity does all the heavy lifting. But in space, things get seriously strange. On the ISS, a candle doesn't flicker or stretch. Instead, it creates a perfect sphere of blue fire, steady and glowing. Without gravity, flames aren't just different, they're downright mesmerizing.
Tomatoes were seen as poison apples and were ostracized by European aristocrats. And while they didn't find any growing in people's lungs, that we know of, it all stemmed from a deadly misunderstanding. When tomatoes, a New World import, started gracing noble tables, a wave of illnesses and even deaths followed. But the culprit wasn't the fruit itself. It was the lead-laced pewter plates fashionable at the time. The tomato's acidity leached toxic lead from the plates, leading to real-life poisoning, not fairy tale demise. However, rather than pinpointing the lead, the tomato was declared inherently poisonous and condemned to culinary purgatory. Fire and ice might seem like natural enemies, but resourceful survivalists have found a way to turn one into the other. The process begins with carving a piece of ice into a rough circle using a knife. Then, using the warmth of your hands, you carefully polish the surface until it forms a clear, smooth lens, basically turning it into an icy magnifying glass. Once shaped, the ice lens can focus sunlight into a concentrated beam, igniting dry tinder and sparking a flame. In 2020, a 3,000-year-old Egyptian priest named Nesyamun made a sound for the first time in millennia. He groaned. And no, he didn't turn into a zombie. Scientists used CT scans of his vocal tract to 3D print a replica, connecting it to a loudspeaker that mimicked the vibrations of a human larynx. The result was a single vowel sound, which researchers believe resembles what Nesyamun's voice once sounded like. While groundbreaking, factors like the position of the mummy's vocal tract and the lack of soft tissue mean the sound is far from authentic, but the experiment has opened the door to a future where we might hear ancient history rather than just see it. We've all wondered, would life be better if we were more attractive? Sure, the constant attention might get annoying, but easier job interviews, better dating prospects, and a shot at a high-paying modeling career sound like decent trade-offs, right? Actually, no. A British study on models found they are more prone to personality disorders and report lower overall happiness. It's surprising at first, but it makes sense. Models are often valued solely for their looks, not for skills they've cultivated, a reality that can chip away at anyone's sense of self-worth. And let's be honest, they're probably hungry too. They scurry in the shadows and leave their unwelcome droppings in their wake. But beyond the nuisance, the common rat harbors a chilling secret, a historical and ongoing legacy of spreading deadly diseases. Over 60 zoonotic diseases, transmissible from animals to humans, can be carried by these seemingly harmless rodents. We all know the bubonic plague, which decimated a third of Europe's population, came from the fleas hitching rides on infected rats. But the plague is just the tip of the iceberg. Hantavirus, with its hemorrhagic fever and leptospirosis, bringing kidney failure and jaundice, even the familiar foes like Salmonella and E. coli, all find willing couriers in rats. In fact, 60% of emerging infectious diseases originate from animals, and rats top the most wanted list. Recently, scientists have been using electroencephalograms, or EEGs, to monitor the brain activity of dying patients. Interestingly, even as other senses like sight and touch dimmed, the auditory cortex, the brain region responsible for hearing, continued to flicker with activity, responding to sound tones for longer than originally presumed possible. This isn't just accidentally interesting, but actually holds profound implications. Just imagine the impact we could have by whispering words of love or playing a favorite song for someone near the end. It's strangely reassuring to know that even when all our other senses have dimmed as the brain goes into its final minutes of function, the last thing to experience before the end is a goodbye and an I love you and a comforting tune. This will be old news if you're a parent, but for the rest of us, did you know babies are covered in hair while in the womb? And I'm not talking about stuff you can see on your arms and legs. I'm talking about a bona fide pre-birth fur coat. Known as lanugo, the hairs sprout on a fetus's shoulders, back, and even forehead at around the 22-week gestation mark. It traps air, creating a tiny insulation layer that keeps the developing baby warm, especially before its internal temperature regulation system kicks in. Lanugo usually sheds naturally before or shortly after birth, leaving behind the smooth, familiar skin we expect. Can you imagine a world where a baby's cries under the surgeon's knife were believed to be nothing but reflexes devoid of true pain? I'm not talking about some distant historical anomaly, but a horrific reality until the 1980s. For decades, a significant portion of the medical community believed newborns simply couldn't feel pain. As a result of this misconception, countless infants had to undergo invasive surgeries, often life-saving, without being given anesthesia. Behind this sad reality lay a flawed understanding of infant neurology. Misinterpretations of scientific research and a reliance on outdated theories created a blind spot in medical practice. Fortunately, researchers began to challenge the prevailing philosophy, pointing to evidence that newborns not only responded to painful stimuli, but also exhibited elevated stress hormone levels during procedures. These findings, backed by meticulous data, slowly chipped away at the established belief, ultimately leading to a seismic shift in pediatric pain management in the late 1980s.
What did you do recently to make yourself happier? Did you indulge in your favorite meal, splurge on wine, plan a vacation, or buy something fancy? If so, you might be chasing happiness all wrong. Those things bring pleasure, not happiness. Pleasure is fleeting and depends on things you can't control. Psychologists warn it can even become addictive, leading to a cycle where one dessert or bottle of wine turns into a whole cake or a case of wine. True happiness, experts say, isn't about what you have, but who you are. It's about giving, helping others, and building resilience. According to psychotherapist Philip Chard, happiness can exist even in life's most challenging moments. You only use 10% of your brain, right? That is completely wrong. No one knows exactly where this myth started, but here's a quick timeline. In 1907, psychologist William James suggests we use only a part of our brain's potential. 1936, Dale Carnegie claims his professor said the same. Some scientists note that neurons make up about 10% of brain cells. Hollywood runs with it in books, shows, and movies. Somehow, this snowballed into the 10% myth. In reality, brain imaging shows that nearly every part of the brain is active, even when we sleep. And left brain or right brain dominance? Another myth. The truth of the matter is that your brain's complexity goes way beyond these oversimplifications. So, did any of these facts shock or surprise you? Let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and check out our social medias, including my personal ones, links in that description below. Now, if you want to learn some really strange facts instead, and these fun ones, then check out another one of our videos, 25 Strangest Facts Guaranteed to Blow Your Mind. The link is right here. But again, don't forget, subscribe, do all that, see more lists. If you subscribe right now, you'll get even more of these. That's amazing.